Hi Ivan, how's it going?
I'm good, Michael. Very good this morning. Lovely day.
Well, apart from Project Hysteria, which now seems to be in full swing, we talked earlier about Project Fear being moved down to England, but now it seems to have taken a turn for the downright ridiculous. The first thing we should get to is yesterday's event, which was in the Sun, Dalgate. What did you see about Dalgate?
I must admit, sorry, Michael, I've been too busy reading about economic theory and policy to spend much time looking at Dalgate. I understand there was some ridiculous story was dragged up in the absence of anything sensible to say about the election.
Well, it appears Nicola Sturgeon cut the hair off her sister's doll, devilishly no less, when she was a child, and this apparently shows her unfitness for a position of power.
Well, no comment. I think we can safely ignore that.
Nicola Sturgeon was good enough to respond to it a few times, saying, well, my sister got it wrong, it was a Cindy and not a Barbie, and so on. And then everybody's been out with their confessions of things they've done to toys as a child. But don't you think that this kind of story is outmoded? Because in the modern context, these things get taken apart and ripped to bits in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, on social media, that's absolutely true because people can communicate very quickly and get analysis and messages round quite a big number of people. But the situation, of course, is that you've perhaps got a much more fragmented audience in terms of media than we've had before. The people that are on social media and are analysing these things and communicating about them, and the people that get their information mainly from social media is perhaps quite a different audience from the people that might read, for example, the Daily Mail. So where you've had some other stories there that I think we're going to come on to later. So the audiences are quite different. The people that are looking at this stuff on social media are perhaps very different people from the people that are reading the Daily Mail and aren't really influenced by what's in the Daily Mail in any event in terms of how they're going to vote.
Do you think this is going to lead to the kind of situation we saw in the independence referendum, whereby people who got most of their information from social media tended to vote yes, whereas people who got their information from, shall we say, more traditional media, such as the television and the newspapers, tended to vote no?
Well, I think that's absolutely still there. There's perhaps more of a trend now. There's also more people going onto social media over time, so that's helpful. And the quality and standard of a lot of the blogs that are online now is obviously improving all the time. So yeah, I think that's probably still there, but maybe over time it becomes the printed media becomes less influential, I would say, which is all to the good, frankly. You get a much more open debate and better information online.
And the story today is Theresa May, who's described the possibility of an SNP Labour pact as the biggest constitutional crisis since the abdication of Edward VIII. And this has led to the most popular hashtag in Britain now, which is worst crisis since the abdication, and people putting things like, I've lost my pen and so on. So, can we go through some other crises there have been since the abdication? I'll give you a starter for 10. World War Two.
The Rwandan genocide.
The Cuban Missile Crisis?
The wars during the breakup of Yugoslavia.
Yep. Falklands War? John Major's affair with Edwina Currie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Black Wednesday, when the pound crashed out of VRM.
The disappearance of Humphrey, the Downing Street cat?
Yeah, that was a good one. Vietnam War.
Yep.
9/11.
Yeah. Extraordinary Rendition?
Yeah, the war in Iraq.
The miners' strike?
Yeah, the winter of discontent.
And finally, Jeff Hoon getting any sort of job in government whatsoever. But I'm sure we can think of any number of things that have been more serious situations than this possibility. But I mean, the level of hysteria, it seems so unusual in that a very few short months ago they were begging us, stay, we want you to stay, we want you to be part of it. And now it's, no, you can't be part of it. You're not allowed to be part of it. This is unfair. I mean, it's a very schizophrenic attitude.
Well, absolutely it is. I suppose it's not really any surprise. They were quite happy for Scotland to hang about as long as we behaved ourselves and did what we were told. As soon as we want to take part in the democratic process and do something different to what is expected of us, then they're not at all happy about it. I think it's also quite interesting that the Tories in particular have taken this particular line. I think it really comes back to the fact that they're struggling to make a breakthrough across the UK. They expected to be ahead in the polls by now at a UK level, and they aren't there, so they're clutching at straws and getting increasingly desperate and try to throw things out there that they hope will have some impact on voters in English marginals. But as I say, I think they're failing to make a breakthrough even with all this ridiculous nonsense that they're coming out with now.
Yeah, so that's the interesting point there. So that's who you think it's aimed at, to try and maybe get people who were thinking of voting UKIP to swing to Tory? Or, I mean, I tried to think, okay, it is ridiculous, but who are they aiming this at?
I think that must be it, because they're trying to squeezing the UKIP vote would certainly help them. They had expected the UKIP vote to collapse a lot more than it has. It's down in the kind of low teens now, but I think they hoped it'd been single figures and that most of those voters would swing back to voting Tory, which would help them in the Tory Labour marginals. I think that's what they expected, but they've not seen that. So I suppose if you're a UKIP voter looking at this stuff, then you maybe see it through different eyes, and would that influence you more likely to vote Tory in order to keep the evil Nicola out of any sphere of influence? Then it might do. But as I say, from where we're looking at it, it does look fairly irrelevant. And I think also anybody in England that was withering between Labour and Tory, does it influence them? I don't know. That might be a target audience for them as well, perhaps.
Just on the last thing on this, given how it's gone in the last couple of days, what do you think we can expect tomorrow? I'm half expecting Alex Salmond to drown kittens every day until Scotland becomes independent or some such.
Yeah, I mean, it's so far out there that you couldn't really imagine what might come along next. But I mean, the abdication itself, of course, is an interesting example to draw on. Edward Windsor, or Edward VIII as he was known, of course, was a well-known Nazi sympathiser, so it was probably better that he didn't stay as king in actual fact. It might have been more of a crisis if he'd been the king through World War II. And of course, it brings us back neatly to where we were last week with Percy Sledge, because despite his Nazi leanings, Edward Windsor, of course, gave up the job title of King of the British Empire, Emperor of India, and all the dominions, etc., 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 because he fell in love with someone, with a woman that precluded him from following that particular career path. So it's quite interesting the way the whole thing panned out.
All right, thanks, Ivan.
Thank you.
Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype.
Yes, was the start of my last jam, so here it is again, another death jam. But since I gave you all